constitutional conservatives and Indigenous leaders to develop a proposal for constitutional recognition. The idea we developed was different. It was organic, it was consistent with our constitutional heritage, and it was a uniquely Australian idea designed for Australian conditions. The proposal was called The Voice. It was a voice for Indigenous communities to our national leaders. It was a way of achieving constitutional recognition that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders have loved this land for centuries, but it also had a practical aspect. It was about creating a new structure to improve the lives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. And it was about finding common ground. I was so committed to this idea that I even set up an organisation called Uphold and Recognise to encourage constitutional conservatives to support the idea of the voice and get involved in the debate. With a referendum due later this year, I believe the time for the voice has come. I believe in local and regional voices. I believe in a national voice drawn from local and regional bodies, and I will support the referendum being put this year. I believe that the voice can help move the dial on Indigenous education, health, housing, safety and economic development. A short time ago, I resigned as Shadow Attorney-General and Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians. I've had many respectful discussions with colleagues about the voice over the past year. I've listened to their views and they've heard mine, but ultimately I haven't been able to persuade them. It's clear that the Shadow Cabinet and the Party Room and I have taken a different position in relation to the voice. The Liberal Party believes in conscience and freedom. Unlike almost any other party in the Parliament, the Liberal Party gives backbenchers the freedom to champion the ideas they believe in. I want to exercise that freedom because I intend to campaign for a yes vote. I've loved my work as Shadow Attorney-General and Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians, and I hope I've done some good. I resign without rancour or bitterness, and I remain a loyal Liberal, fully committed to the leadership of Peter Dutton. I've worked with Peter Dutton for many years. As the Shadow Minister, I've probably travelled with Peter Dutton more than any other colleague. I've seen him listen to and engage with Indigenous communities and Indigenous leaders. And he has a genuine desire to improve the conditions that Indigenous Australians find themselves in. Peter and I had a conversation about my position last December on The Voice, and we've talked several times since. They've been respectful conversations. Peter did everything he could to keep me. I respect that, and I respect him very much. But it was clear on the day before Shadow Cabinet and the Party Room meeting last week that I was in a different position to a majority of my colleagues. At that point, Peter and I agreed that I would take the Passover and Easter break to reflect on my position, which I've done. My resignation about today as a frontbencher is not about personality. It's about trying to keep faith with the very chords of belief and belonging that are part of who I am. Keeping faith with the First Peoples of this land who want to have a stake in their own future, with a structural change in our Constitution to help improve the quality of their lives. Keeping faith with the Constitution, that invisible pillar that holds our nation together. Keeping faith with my parliamentary colleagues, men and women who believe in this country and work tirelessly for it every day. And keeping faith with my family and my community, who keep sending me to Parliament as their representative. But above all, keeping faith with my values. Liberal values based on a fair-minded conservative temperament that caused me to get involved in this issue more than a decade ago. As a Liberal, I believe in the dignity of every Australian, in what can be achieved when they are affirmed, valued and empowered. I believe better policy is made when the very people who are affected by it are consulted. I believe that through empowering people and by building institutions that shift responsibility and decision-making closer to people, we're more likely to shift the dial on Indigenous health, education, housing, safety and economic advancement. As a Conservative, I believe in our shared national fabric. We need to find common ground as Australians, not just on this issue, but on so many more. No great nation has ever been built by dividing it. Good nations engage in the search for common purpose and common ground. I believe that the government must seriously engage with coalition voters, and it hasn't done so to date. And this failure could ultimately put the referendum at risk. When it comes to the voice, I believe that Australians who remain to be convinced by the yes case fall into three groups. The first group are those opposed to the voice on philosophical or constitutional grounds. The second group are those who support the voice in principle or who want to support it but who in the vast majority of cases have genuine doubts and questions about the proposal that the government's put forward. And the third group are yet to engage, but they too will have questions and concerns. I understand those concerns. I too have wrestled with them. I believe that during the committee and parliamentary debates in the months ahead, we can answer those concerns and put the referendum on a surer footing for success. Last Monday, I put forward a new amended model for the voice at the National Press Club. It was a model about putting the referendum on a safer footing. I did so because I don't think the referendum is tracking to success with support in the mid-50s. The Press Club model achieves three things. First, it affirms the importance of local and regional bodies as outlined by the Kalmar-Langton report and supported by the Coalition. Local and regional voices, connected into a national voice, are the way we can move the dial on the vital challenges so many local communities face. Second, it achieves constitutional recognition without using symbolic language which is out of keeping with the rest of the Constitution, removing questions and doubts about activist judges. And third, it leaves the scope and powers of the voice completely to Parliament, rather than turbocharging objections to disputed words in the Constitution. In other words, removing Clause 2 of the amendment. These changes will deliver a voice that is in every way constitutionally safe, a voice that honours Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians and gives them a place in our founding document, a voice that recognises that all of us have a shared interest in this land and its future, and a shared support for parliamentary sovereignty in our constitutional system. A voice that is founded on common ground, a voice that will win because we've taken off the barnacles. The risk to our country and the risk to our shared national reconciliation project of failure and needs to be recognised by the government. An all or nothing approach could deliver nothing. That's why we must find common ground. We all have a responsibility in this debate. As I've said many times, if you're a leader or an advocate for the yes case, you have a responsibility to listen to the legitimate questions of those who doubt. And if you're a leader or an advocate for the no case, then you have a responsibility to listen to the aspirations of Indigenous Australians who see value in a voice. No matter where we are in this debate, we all must find a way to walk a mile in another's shoes. There's always been a place in this country, in our heart and soul, for civil debate, for discussion that helps us find common ground. And in this debate, that means not calling those who disagree with you racist or inferring that they come to the table in bad faith. And it means not assuming that those who disagree with you want special privileges. The voice is not about special privileges. It's about recognising that our Indigenous brothers and sisters, it is about recognising that Indigenous Australians are our brothers and sisters, and we have left them behind in our shared national project. This is a choice for every Australian, and we must all work to find common ground, to put the referendum on a more secure path and to win together later this year. Ahead of us is the parliamentary and committee process. The next 2 months are about moving the referendum to a more secure footing to answer the doubts many voters have, and that's where my focus will be. Today my title changes, but my work doesn't. I'm still the Liberal member for Berowra. I love our party and I love our community. I love helping local residents, visiting schools, talking to local businesses, visiting community groups and advocating for them. It's the job that I relish. I've got 3 political goals that I'll be working for heart and soul for the remainder of this parliamentary term. The first is to keep serving the people of Berowra as their local member, working on the issues that matter to them, like the pressure on household budgets as living costs go up and interest rates rise, and the pressure on small businesses from tax increases and power prices that they've had to absorb. The second goal is to do everything I can to put this amendment on a surer footing before ultimately campaigning yes for the voice in the course of this year. And at this point, I want to have a shout out to my old friend Pat Dodson, who I chaired the 2018 Joint Select Committee with. I would really love to be on the hustings together with Pat, but he's got a bigger campaign to win, and I just wanted to wish Pat well. I'll be thinking of him as I campaign. My final goal for this term is to work for the election of a coalition government under the leadership of Peter Dutton. In Peter Dutton, we have the most experienced and tested opposition leader in our history. Peter Dutton is a man who kept our country safe for 9 years, and I look forward to working for his election. I believe so deeply in our Liberal values. This is what I stand for. This is what I will fight for. And I'm happy to take questions.
You said earlier this year, you've had many criticisms of the Voice this year. Earlier this year, you said Labor was at risk of losing your support. What's happened since you last aired your very substantial criticisms at their proposal and now to change your mind and so emphatically support a referendum? And will you still be supporting a referendum if some of your press club ideas don't get up?
Look, I think the first thing is to say I don't believe that the government has handled this process particularly well, and I've been very critical of the Prime Minister and of the government. We had a proper bipartisan process up until the 2022 election. Some of the previous reports even were given both to the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. We worked through things together, but that changed in 2022. And you had a situation over the summer where the Prime Minister had said, look at the Calma-Langton report, the details in there, but couldn't even deal with the detail himself of some of the issues that were raised there. So I have been very critical and continue to be critical of the way that the government has handled this. But that doesn't stop me from supporting a proposal that I think is right and that I've had a hand in developing along the way, going back as far back as 2014. I want the government to get serious. We're at a point now in the debate where things are before a parliamentary committee and they're ultimately before the parliamentary process. And this means looking closely at proposed amendments to the government's model. That's why I've put forward the Press Club model, a model that provides a pathway for the funding of local and regional bodies, a model that seeks to amend the government's proposal in order to give the referendum the best chance of success. I will fight for those amendments, but ultimately I will support the referendum because I'm a supporter of the voice. I think it's right that it has a place in the Constitution. I think, though, making those amendments puts the referendum on a better chance of success and will have a better chance of convincing more Australians to support this. This is not about the Prime Minister, it's not about me, it's not about any other parliamentarian, it's about the people of Australia.
Julian, who do you believe should follow you as Shadow Minister, and how do you plan to campaign for guests? What will your involvement in that campaign be?
Well, on the first question, that's a matter for the Leader of the Opposition. On the second, I intend to spend the next 6 weeks advocating for the Press Club model, because the Press Club model provides the best way to encourage those Australians that I spoke about earlier, those people who are inclined to support the voice but have questions and doubts about some of the constitutional aspects, to come on board and join the Yes campaign. That will be the focus of my work over the next 6 weeks, and thereafter I'll be an advocate for the importance of getting this done.
Did Peter tell you before last Wednesday's party room meeting that he was going to reject the model that you put forward at the National Press Club?
Look, I'm not going to go into the specifics of discussions that we had. I'll say this. Peter and I have been talking about my position on the voice since last December, and that I was a person who very much wanted to campaign yes for this. You know, we had a shadow cabinet meeting, we had a party room meeting. The feeling in all of the meetings that we had on Wednesday was overwhelming. My colleagues did not want to support the model that the Prime Minister put forward. They did commit, as I'm committing to today, to local and regional voices, because we know that supporting local and regional voices is the thing that will help shift the dial on the ground. I think my colleagues have known what my position on this has been for a long time, because I've been such a public advocate. As I say, I even started an organisation called Uphold and Recognise some years ago, almost 10 years ago, to encourage constitutional conservatives to support this idea. And so what I'm doing today is to resign on a point of principle so I can campaign yes.
I just think there needs to be some sort of clarity on that part. Like, is the sticking point for Liberals about a legislative voice in the Constitution? Is that the sticking point that people seem to have an issue with in the party?
Look, I think the key difference between the government and the opposition on this is that the position that the opposition has taken is not to support a referendum to put the voice in the Constitution. That, I think, is the key point. The opposition's position is to support constitutional recognition, but not the voice in the Constitution. The opposition's position as well is to support the rollout of local and regional voices. That was recommended by the Calma-Langton report, and so to bring that about. Let me tell you my position. My position is to support the voice in the Constitution. My position is to support the rollout of local and regional voices that lead into a national voice. That is the position that I will be advocating for.
Are you disappointed that you've had to resign today, and do you think the party could have handled this a bit better?
No, I'm not. I mean, our party has a tradition. We have a tradition that members of the executive, shadow cabinet, shadow ministers, need to abide by the decision of shadow cabinet and the party room, and that's a time-honoured tradition. One of the great things we have in the Liberal Party, and I have to contrast our position to the Labor Party. If I was in the Labor Party, I would have to resign from the Labor Party in order to do this. Because I'm in the Liberal Party, as a backbencher, I can choose to have the freedom to champion an issue that I think is important, as backbenchers do every day, and that is the choice I've made.
Julian, do you take any responsibility for the fact that you haven't been able to move the Liberal Party and the shadow cabinet with you? As you said, you've had your position for a long time and they knew that.
Look, this is a topic about which reasonable people will come to and be able to have reasonable disagreements about. I respect the position of my colleagues. I respect the experiences that they bring to the Parliament, the communities they represent and the like, and they have a different history on these issues to the history that I have. I've ultimately come to the position I have because I've been here from day one as a supporter of the idea of this. I wish the government could have done a process which would have brought more people along, which would have committed to the local and regional voices, which would have seen a national voice legislated so there was more detail on the table, which would have worked through the constitutional amendment before it went to the sort of final committee point. But they haven't, and so we are where we are, and I'll be proud to campaign over the next period in order to change that amendment so we can put an amendment that's got a better chance of success.
You
Has your more frontbenchers will follow your move?
Well, that's ultimately a matter for them, but for me, I think I'm the only person who's had this unique experience of having been involved in this issue for a decade, having sat down with constitutional conservatives and Indigenous leaders to work out one way of how this could be done, to have chaired a joint select committee on these matters, to have established an organisation to encourage constitutional conservatives to get on board and support this. No one else in our party room has that experience, and so I think I'm in a unique situation. Today I'm resigning without rancour, but on a point of principle, and I think what I want to be able to say to my children in the future is that your father stood up for something that he believes in, and that's really important, and that's what all of us as parliamentarians should do.
Has your decision inflicted irreparable damage on Peter Dutton's leadership?
So I want to take
You're
this.
following Ken Wyatt in, he quit the Liberal Party, you're quitting the frontbench. What conversations have you had with him, and do you think two very senior Liberals who have been very involved in constitutional recognition for such a long time quitting the party sends a message about the Liberal brand and what the party stands for?
Absolutely not. I am a loyal member of the Liberal Party. I'm proud to be the Liberal member for Barara. I'm not going anywhere in terms of my support for the Liberal Party and my campaigning for the Liberal Party and my desire to see a Liberal government elected under the leadership of Peter Dutton. I reached out to Ken after his announcement and I said to him I'm sad that he's left the party and that I hope that we can bring him back, and I look forward to talking to him later this week.
Do you feel like the party may be on the wrong side of history in terms of its stance on the voice?
Look, I think everybody has to make their own decision about these matters, and that's what I'm doing today. I think it's important to acknowledge what the party is saying in relation to the voice. The party is saying it supports the local and regional voices. It's saying it doesn't support the Prime Minister's model here. And why I've resigned is because I do support having the voice in the Constitution. That's consistent with a position that I've held for years. I've never said otherwise, and for me that this is a point of principle.
Do you think that the Liberal Party position will destroy the referendum's chances of being carried?
Sorry, say that again?
Do you think that the Liberal Party's position will destroy the referendum's chances of being carried?
I think the thing that most endangers the chance of the referendum being carried is if the Prime Minister and the government don't engage with the reasonable concerns of people who still remain to be convinced. As I said, there are coalition voters and Australians more broadly who want to support the voice but have got questions and concerns about the form of referendum model that he's put forward. It's the reason that I got up and spoke at the Press Club last week. I think if we see a commitment to local and regional bodies funded in the budget, if we see the government willing to remove those issues in their referendum proposal that will cause constitutional controversy, that we can have the voice in the Constitution and that we can maintain the supremacy of Parliament and we can move forward as a nation together.
Was there a point you will still support the referendum? that?
I tell you what I'm going to do. Over the next 6 weeks, I'm going to work as hard as I can to get those changes implemented. Nothing's inevitable until it happens, and politics is the art of the possible, two of my favourite cliches about these things. So I'm going to be working hard every day. But ultimately, I want to see a voice in our constitution, and I want people to know that I'm coming to this in good faith, as I've always done, and that I look forward to seeing a successful referendum, a referendum that more and more Australians can support.
Was there a tax in question time take its toll?
Absolutely not. I mean, I have been on the record about this matter since 2014. I founded an organisation to encourage people to support constitutional recognition and the voice. You know, I wish the Prime Minister would have spent more time reading the Calma-Langton report rather than reading my classic quotes, but that's absolutely fine. I stand behind every single statement that I've made on this. I've been consistent in my approach. I want to see the voice in the Constitution. I want to see a referendum succeed.
Was there a point at which you believed you could get Peter Dutton to a yes position, and at what point did it become clear to you that that would not happen?
I want to go back to when Peter Dutton first became opposition leader. Peter Dutton said that he came to this with an open mind and asked for detail. When at Gama, the Prime Minister revealed his first form of these words that have been changed twice subsequently. I said that I too welcomed his words being put forward, but wanted to see detail. We've been asking for detail, and detail never came. When Peter put forward his list of questions for the Prime Minister, those questions were not answered. When he asked for the release of the Solicitor General's advice, that advice was not answered. I think Peter came to a point where he has come to this whole debate with an open mind and a good heart, as many of my colleagues did, absolutely. But we kept not being able to engage the Prime Minister in this. What I'm looking forward to doing in the next period is to engaging all members of the Parliament on this issue and finding a way forward to get a successful referendum. Thanks so much.